I'm sure that when you hear the word sequel, it raises a red flag. Tell me if that's not true. Even celebrated animations like Megamind and Toy Story have a few missteps in their history, and today I'm going to talk about each of them, along with many other famous franchises that ended up with bad sequels, or, at the very least, were way below expectations. Today, I'll show you the worst sequels in the world of animation, and some of them, I bet you didn't even know existed. Megamind 2. Unlike the first movie, which was a hit, grossing $321 million at the box office, the second film, which you probably didn't even know existed unless you've seen my video on this disaster called Megamind 2, literally premiered with 0% approval from critics on Rotten Tomatoes. Released this year with a much smaller budget than the original, which boasted a 73% critic rating, Megamind 2 went directly to the streaming platform Peacock. Honestly, that was a good call because it saved people from spending money on a trip to the theater to see this mess. This sequel was essentially a recipe for disaster since it lacks the originality of the first movie and comes off as a generic follow-up, with none of the original cast reprising their roles. Oh, and they even named it Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate, and it really was doomed. Cars 2. Although the first Cars movie was a bit polarizing among Pixar fans, it was a huge box office hit. Released in 2006, it earned $461 million and remains one of the studio's animations with a highly loyal fan base to this day. While the original Cars holds an 80% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, Cars 2 was left in the dust with only 49% approval from audiences. Even though Cars 2 outperformed the first movie at the box office, grossing $561 million, the biggest criticism was that everything fans loved about the first film was replaced by a completely new plot with Mater as the central character. They shifted away from the original's focus, almost like Fast and Furious, which began with a focus on street racing but later evolved into an action-packed spy thriller with explosions. Despite this misstep, Cars 3 redeemed the series by returning to racing, focusing on Lightning McQueen as the main character while letting Mater shine as the perfect secondary character. Kung Fu Panda 4. The Kung Fu Panda franchise has undeniably become one of the most iconic animated series in recent years, thanks to its charismatic characters and impressive villains like Tai Lung, Lord Shin, and Kai. Altogether, the series has grossed over $2 billion, with the first two films holding the highest earnings. While the first three Kung Fu Panda movies are widely appreciated by fans, the same can't be said for the fourth installment. DreamWorks' biggest mistake was misleading fans with the trailer, which hinted at the return of past villains in more significant roles. However, the new villain, the Chameleon, easily overpowered all of them, and it became clear that the returning characters were mostly included to boost ticket sales rather than to develop their stories or honor their fan bases. Kung Fu Panda 4 ended up feeling like a letdown, with wasted potential that left fans of Tai Lung, Shen, and Kai disappointed. This could have been the best film in the franchise, but instead fell short of expectations. Toy Story 4. Yes, let's talk about this one again. If you think DreamWorks was the only studio to stumble with a fourth movie, think again. Disney and Pixar also fell victim to the curse of the fourth film. When a series reaches a natural conclusion and then later announces another sequel, there's a strong chance it won't live up to the previous movies. Toy Story 3 had provided a perfect ending, and the franchise was set to finish as a trilogy. But after earning over $1 billion, Pixar decided to make Toy Story 4. And, as I've said before, the moment I walked out of the theater, I thought, Pixar is going to need a Toy Story 5 to fix this mess. The beloved classic characters are technically present in Toy Story 4, but many were pushed aside to make room for new ones, which was a big letdown. Buzz Lightyear, who's arguably the most beloved character in the series, is reduced to more of a sidekick and even given a somewhat silly portrayal. And then there's Forky, who, let's be real, is one of the most irritating animated characters ever. He probably should have stayed in the trash. The movie feels like it's trying to force a revival for a story that already had a satisfying conclusion. However, the Toy Story franchise's success at the box office, where each film has progressively made more, likely fueled fueled Pixar's decision to keep it going. To put things in perspective, Toy Story 1 grossed $400 million, while Toy Story 4 surpassed $1 billion. Pixar sees this as a goldmine, which makes it hard for them to stop, even if it means the movie's quality takes a hit. Let me know in the comments, do you think Toy Story 4 is the worst in the franchise? For me, it's not only the worst Toy Story film, but also Pixar's worst. Open Season 3 and 4. Moving away from Disney and DreamWorks, Open Season is a series by Sony Pictures Animation. The first film, released in 2006, grossed $200 million and is genuinely hilarious. Boog and Elliot, the main characters, have great chemistry, and the story is fun and engaging. The second film is still decent, with some funny scenes, but everything starts to go downhill in Open Season 3. The plot is set in a circus, where Boog switches places with an identical circus bear. The story becomes generic, the ideas are weak, and the film only has a 30% approval rating from audiences. Yet somehow, that wasn't enough to stop the franchise. In Open Season 4, things go from bad to worse. The curse of the fourth film really hit hard with this one. There are very few franchises that seem to escape it. I even have a video showing all the great films that fell into this infamous curse. In Open Season 4, the animation quality noticeably drops, with bland and uninspired backgrounds. The humor? Practically non-existent. The plot revolves around a horror story featuring a werewolf in the forest, but it fails to capture any of the charm or humor of the original films. Surf's Up 2. Speaking of unnecessary sequels, the wave-riding penguins of Surf's Up return for a sequel that probably shouldn't have seen the light of day. Actually, only some of the characters returned, as this movie ignores much of what was established in the original. Important characters from the first movie are absent, which makes the sequel feel disconnected. Much like Megamind 2, Surf's Up 2 debuted directly on streaming in 2016, tarnishing the reputation of the original, which is leagues better. The sequel barely touches on surfing and was instead used as a marketing tool to promote WWE tournaments in the United States. This led to the studio adding big, muscular penguins who fight more than they surf, and the classic characters receive little to no development. Even Chicken Joe, a fan favorite, is turned into a generic character whose only role seems to be cracking unfunny jokes. So, which sequel from this list did you like the least? Did I miss any? Drop a comment below. And while you're at it, check out my video on the confirmed Toy Story 5, as well as my deep dive on the Megamind 2 disaster. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next Cine Lovers.